Part of the idea of this course and making a short film completely inside of the engine is that I'm also going to be designing my virtual sets and location in Engine. I'm doing this using a combination of permanently free Epic Games assets as well as Quixel Megascans. So the goal here is for real-time iteration and rendering while I'm actually building. So when I'm putting together my sets and environments, I'm building everything in real time and I'm seeing it live. So what I first need to do is take a look at my script breakdown. I'm going to choose the grassland scene here that I grayboxed previously. What I like to do is I like to build through the POV of a cine camera actor with my film back settings set to a wide angle lens. This allows me to keep in mind the aspect ratio I'm building for and the overall look and feel. Now, something that I want to be really clear about is I'm only going to build the level of detail needed for my final frame. I don't need to spend time on details that the camera is going to overlook. So the main question here is it foreground? Is it middle ground? Is it background? And of course, is it in focus? As I answer these questions, I can sort of decide what the level of detail is going to be in the different parts of my frame. Instead of using the pre-built sky dome mesh or the Skysphere blueprint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an HDRI. So this HDRI is brought in. You can see over here that I can drag and drop the HDRI actor in, and then I'm going to fill it in with the HDRI image that I've gotten from HDRI Haven, a Creative Commons site that will be linked in the course materials. So once I've put that in, you'll notice that I'm getting this sort of inbuilt illumination from the HDRI. Now remember, this is not a physically accurate lighting course that we're doing here. The only physically accurate attributes that I currently have put together inside of this scene are the camera values outside of the way that aperture affects exposure. So this HDRI has essentially replaced my Skysphere, and this will be sort of the background image for my shot. The other thing that I'm going to do after I've done the gray boxing is I'm going to use the terrain tool to create some far background elements. Nothing too close to the camera, mainly on the horizon. The reason that I'm not really going to do anything close to camera here is I don't want to worry about having to put too much detail using the terrain tool inside of my shot and my environment closer to camera. I'm going to rely on highly detailed assets from Quixel and their Megascans to fill in sort of the middle and foreground. What I love about these Quixel assets is that I can use the concepts of transform repetition to use similar shapes to create unique formations and landscape features, which help flesh out my scene. It's simple at first. I'm just going to drop a couple of them in, but the more I rotate, scale, and shift them, the more unique they're going to seem. Most people won't be able to tell unless you're really familiar with these assets that I'm only using the same 4 or 5 meshes in this entire scene. So one thing that you really need to do as well is pay attention to asset scale. So resolution across the asset textures seems continuous. You wouldn't want to blow something up 200% and place it next to a similar item in the same foreground, middle ground, or background section that is a much higher density of texture resolution. Another thing that we're going to take a look at a little bit later on is the fact that the materials on these textures art direction-wise might not match up. I might be using stuff from multiple different packs, but since they have material instances on them, I can actually make adjustments that'll change their diffuse color to better match one another and really tie together the art direction for the whole scene. After I've continued to place most of my elements using the gray box as the guiding principle, what I'm going to then do is bring in the foliage tool, and I'm going to cover the static meshes and terrains. So this is my idea here, is I want to create some rolling grass into the distance and some up-close deciduous forest terrain and sort of reeds and sort of long grass near the camera. This is a little bit of a departure from my initial gray box, but gives me the same sort of look and feel with the lines leading across the frame and also opening up the space in the distance because I want the sun to sort of highlight the foliage in the distance and give me a real sense of depth in this shot. After I've sort of put everything together in a very general way, what I'm going to start doing is placing my hero props into the environment. Hero props for me are anything that I considered like sort of a featured item or object that exists in the frame. So I'm not necessarily going to use the same mesh that I've used 20 times, with the sort of creative, iterative repetition approach to sort of fill out my level. I'm going to pick some sort of hero elements that are going to rest closer to frame, and these are going to be much higher resolution too, so they're going to sort of draw the eye in terms of the quality. These items add to the overall composition, And this is the part of my process, my personal process, where I sort of improvise a bit, and I just move stuff around. I see what works well. I start balancing the composition a little bit more. And this is all based off what the frame looks like. Once I have all of these elements together, it's time for me to jump into sort of tying this art direction together, because right now I have a lot of disparate sort of styles and color clashes going on, and I want to make sure that I can equalize everything in a realistic way. But I'll only do that after I'm happy with how the geometry for my virtual set is laid out.